Hello.
Yes, sir. Start ಮಾಡಿ sir.
Yeah. Hello. Good morning to everyone. The other day, I was planning to talk on some issues related to ancient Indian history and the latest researches on that. The other day, I could not do it. So today, I thought we can take up this topic. Most of us have heard about the famous concept of golden child uh, on Neolithic Revolution. Neolithic Revolution has certain importance that agriculture was started in on a large scale in certain areas, and along with that, the pastoral way of life had also started. Now, very importantly, the area from Egypt, northern part of Egypt, and certain areas of North Africa, then to Mesopotamia, southern part of Iran, up to Indus Valley, the seven rivers, the Indus Valley region, which we talk about. So this was one area where in human history, the process of agriculture in a big way was noticed. And along with that, a rearing of sheep and goat also started in a big way. So this was a great revolution in the ancient days. Now, this process had started around 12,000 years back, exactly 10,000 BC. We find the evidence of settled agriculture in the Jordan Valley in the Middle East. And then we also get evidence of agriculture, cultivation of wheat, cultivation of barley, cultivation of several millets, several other crops in these areas. And along with that, well-organized rearing of domesticated animals like sheep and goat. So both agriculture and pastoral life went side by side in these vast areas of Asia and up to Indus Valley region, the south, and then much later to South Asia region, you find the extension of this. Now, one of the most important points to remember is that they had noticed and conducted detailed study of evidence of extensive agriculture and the pastoral life in some areas of Afghanistan. We have a very important spot in Afghanistan where they have located, just like in the Jordan Valley, they had located evidence of agriculture and evidence of sheep and goat rearing in a big way. Mehergar, again, in Afghanistan, we have evidence of this in a big way. And Afghanistan, another area, also we have discovered large level of evidence on archaeological evidence, the skeletons of sheep and goat on a wide scale, and also evidence of these crops which I have mentioned earlier in a big way. Now, southern part of Iran had well-established state system. although the geographical locations and identification varied from place to place. Migrations of people used to take place, but we have evidence of the Elamite kingdom or state in southern part of Iran. It was one of the earliest civilizations of the Persian region. Uh, that is very important. So, Elam region, the Elamite Empire, we have evidence even in the Old Testament about the Elamite kingdom. The war took place between the Jewish population and the Mesopotamian population and the uh, Elamite kings. We have a very important place called Susa in Elam. This was the capital of Elamite kingdom earlier. And this has been mentioned in the Old Testament also. We have at least 20 to 25 evidences from different uh, uh, chapters and sentences we get from Old Testament from the very early days. So the name of Elamite kingdom was very clearly mentioned there. And the most important point is that there was a closer relationship between the Elam state and people who settled in the Indus Valley. There is also an argument that people who had organized the Indus Valley civilization were actually the people from southern part of Iran who spoke a language which was very closer to the Dravidian uh, languages of southern India, whether it is Kannada or Tamil or Telugu or Malayalam. You have hundreds of words with slight variations. You can locate in Hebrew language, in Aramaic language, and also in most of these southern languages. For example, we have a term like Appa, father, Abba in Hebrew and in Aramaic, Ammuma, the grandmother, which is there in the Dravidian root. The same term can be found in either Aramaic language or in Hebrew as Amuma. The stress on the consonant is lesser there. Similarly, in Balochistan, we have clear Mehagar and other areas, where they have undertaken many excavations. These areas also you find that people spoke a language which was perhaps we can say Proto-Dravidian language. Several terms continue to be there. For example, the term called Kala, Kala, Palekala, Osakala, we say, times. Now in Aramaic and Hebrew, you have term called Galam. It's only the difference of stress on the consonant. Ka becomes Ga, Galam in Aramaic and Hebrew, and Kalam or Kala in Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, and other languages. So we have several such, I don't go into the this part of linguistic studies because many have undertaken these studies. Perhaps we may require one or two lectures specifically on that to explain all these developments in different areas and the similarities. Well, that is a different question. We have people like Alpin, MC Alpin and others, and Parpola, Asko Parpola, who attempted to locate some of the common words and expressions in these different regions and try to identify that a proto Dravidian Elamite culture existed. And perhaps all these regions, southern part of Iran and the Indus Valley region continued to be one geographical area where the civilization emerged, the urban civilization emerged at a time when even China did not have a robust urban civilization. Now, when you look at the question of, apart from agriculture and the practice of rearing of domesticated animals, because this was perhaps the earliest uh, milestone in the human civilization. And with all the findings which we have now, it is important that these developments have taken place in one continuous geographical area from Egypt, North Africa, Tunisia, and other regions, including southern Iran, Mesopotamia, Syria, the present Syria, Assyria, which were part of the Mesopotamian culture. And it continued to be up to the Indus Valley. So this is a very important point that we may find similarities in the terms in the linguistic similarities we may find there, and perhaps thousands of years back, 2,500 BC was the high peak of Indus Valley civilization. That is 4,500 years back. It was at high peak. And the Rigvedic period, which we talk about, was much later, 1300 BC. So there is a lot of time gap between the Indus Valley civilization and in the declining days, almost nearer to the declining days, you find linguistic evidences from Rigveda and other records. But the locale was very often changing. The early Rigvedic writings, if you say the compositions, if you go through, you find that it is not one specific location. The location was changing from area to area, place to place. And yes, yes. Any problem? Hello? Can you hear? Can you hear? Can you hear? Can you hear?
Yes, sir, sure.
Okay, okay. Because I heard somebody was asking question, I thought. Okay, so we will go back to the same points that in the Rigveda, you find that compositions had started much earlier when the migration had started from outside India, because the locations mentioned in some of the earlier versions were not the locations of either Indus Valley region or Ganges region or other places, because Ganges itself is rarely mentioned in the Rig Veda. But other rivers are mentioned, but not Ganges. So the location was entirely different. And the Iranian text Avesta also, which was composed earlier to this. Also, you may find a lot of terms and references which can be considered similar when migrations took place from one place to another. So it is not a static state system we are talking about. Indus Valley had its domination during several centuries for a longer period. And the geographical locations, it was not, it was a porous location because very often migrations had taken place even when there was no strong state system. One of the most important points we have to accept is that in the case of Indus Valley, when you look at the structures, the urban structures, we don't find very large structures, building structures, indicating a very powerful state system, strong kingship, or royal style of life or anything there, because a majority of the buildings can be considered uniform, maybe with slight modification here and there, slightly larger, but not evidence of an imperial state power existing in Indus Valley. If you look at the history of Carthage, much later, the Carthage had defeated the Romans. Early days of Roman Empire, Roman state. Several wars had taken place between Carthage and Rome. And in the case of Carthage also, they were originally a population from the present Lebanon, who had built up trading posts in many places in North Africa. And they controlled the trading networks, Phoenicians, which we use the term Phoenicians, trading networks in many areas of the Adriatic Sea and southern Italian Sea and North Africa. So there also we don't have a very powerful, a merchant uh, ruling class was there. Even for Carthage, they had their military, and because military was required for trade, but not an imperial system as such that we don't find. So in the case of uh, Indus Valley also, you don't have to search for a very powerful imperial system. It was not needed. As long as they were able to uh, manage their trade and economic activities, their uh, agricultural operations, their trade and other activities without much hindrance. So the point is that we don't go into very strong imperial state system in the Indus Valley. The indication from the ground we get that most of the buildings were the buildings of virtually uniform type with slight variations and evidences of uh, tanks. We may call them swimming pools. The construction had shown like that. That for people to take bath in public places, they had such constructions also you make it. But a very strong imperial system did not exist there. Perhaps in the long run, that was one of the reasons for its uh, decline or collapse. But at the same time, it also helped this uh, civilization to sustain for many centuries and uh, uh, in the region, carrying on with their basic socio-economic activities in a big way. We have Shireen Ratnagar in her publication. She talks about the relationship between the Elamite state and also the Indus Valley uh, civilization. The reason is that Persian Gulf region was the very important location for trade. In Mesopotamia, for example, there was great demand for many metals from India, timber from India, uh, precious metals and stones of different type, shells of different types. These were all acquired from the Indus Valley region. The only metal which was not found in large quantities, evidence about it, in Indus Valley is silver. But the earlier historians, like Osambi, located evidence of rectangular silver pieces there in some of the locations. And they have found the cuneiform writing. The writing was essentially the Mesopotamian writing. And therefore, it was argued that this silver uh, piece, which rectangular piece, which was identified there, with with the Mesopotamian cuneiform writing, perhaps came from in larger quantity. This came from Mesopotamian region rather than locally producing it. One of the trade was carried on land, on caravans, as it continued for several centuries till the Middle Ages. We have evidence of trading groups moving in caravans, in groups carrying their goods and materials for sale outside. But in this region, there was also an important point that they had access to Persian Gulf. Now, Indus Valley area and part of the Indian region had the advantage of timber in large quantities because of the availability of these timber of good quality in Indus Valley region and its locations. It was easy for them to use this timber for making ships. You don't compare it with modern ships, but uh, with wooden material, timber was used in large quantities throughout centuries, even until 18th century. Indian timber was exported to Bombay, where the East India Company had their ship making process going on there. 18th century, we have a lot of evidence of that. And Indian timber was always in demand. See, either it was in the medieval period or the Roman period or the Phoenician period, Indian timber was in great demand. So one of the most important points to remember is that uh, the timber could be used in large quantities by the people of Indus Valley to make ships, not only to uh, carry on their trade on the seven seas, on the seven seas, the Sapta Sindhu region, but also on the Persian uh, waters. It could be used, and goods could be carried on the coastal area from one area to the north, where they could have successful trade, because on sea they could carry bigger ships, they could carry more uh, uh, goods of their purchases and sale uh, by going by a sea. So shipbuilding was a very important factor that we may have to understand here. They have got rudimentary evidences of wreckage of these from different areas, but uh, we may uh, consider that the specific specialities of this region, that is Indus Valley region, with availability of best quality of timber, which was not available in the Mesopotamian belt or in southern part of Elam uh, kingdom. Here it was uh, used in a big way, and the construction for the smaller boats as well as for ships for sea trade. So seafaring was a very important issue of this period, and the Indus Valley people could carry their goods through these rivers and their tributaries from the interior areas, and they could be taken to the other areas of Mesopotamia and also by land to Iran and other places. So we have a clear evidence of the trade links with, it is not just we assume certain things, but we have got a lot of evidences about the actual trade which was going on because of the facilities of the availability of timber, and also the metals which could be regularly exported from India through by land and also by sea. So this is a very important point which we may have to remember. Now, very closely associated with this issue of trade, the question of metrology. Metrology is the science of weights and measures. This was something which the Indus Valley uh, civilization had achieved greatly. For example, if you take uh, the evidence about the weight and measures, we find that the Indus Valley people had a very effective method of uh, making the measurements. You have evidence of using uh, weighing instruments of copper. We have in some places we have good evidence of that. And again, measurement. The measurement basically is, if you take, for example, 0.8565 grams, the smallest weight which they could identify was 0.8565 grams. Then we also find these weights proceeded in a series, first doubling from 1, then 24, then 8 to 64, then going to 160, then proceeded in a decimal multiples of 16, decimal multiples of 16, 320, then 640, 1600. These were all the multiples of 16, 320, 640, 1600, 3200. Then you get 6400, 8000 to 1,28,000. Now, together with the stone weights, from the smallest, I told you about 1.8565 gram, to the largest quantity, you have different measures for that, which were excavated from there. But we also have evidence of bronze rod and suspended copper plates. So weights and measures, which, as you do practice in modern times, it had its origin in 2500 or 3000 BC in Indus Valley. This had, because the point is that uh, the necessity of this metrology was that trade had extended to such an extent that it necessitated the weights and measures. The development of uh, metrology. Metrology was a very important issue in human development, in human history. And Indus Valley had contributed in a big way to this. So it is very important that the weights and measures, not only the decimal multiples of 16 could be found when you analyze this information which we get here, but also bronze rod and copper cups were used for measurement, as you have in modern times in shops they use. Of course, it is now digitalized. Uh, they have also linear measurements, which was important for the construction of buildings. So a rudimentary mathematical knowledge existed, which of course developed in the subsequent centuries uh, during the Indus Valley period, and also subsequently in the early Vedic period and the subsequent centuries. It had expanded and developed. The Indian mathematical knowledge had expanded in a big way. But the point is that the Indus Valley people had originally contributed to this kind of science in a big way. And this science necessitated uh, the discovery becomes necessary because of the expanding trade contacts between Indus Valley region, the Elam state, and other areas of Mesopotamia. So this is a very important point which we may have to remember here. The weight metrology was perhaps one of the most important contributions because in the earlier period, people who had seen these uh, weighing tools, they did not understand in the beginning what exactly it was. But later, when they studied deeply into different types of these weights and measures, they found that there was a clear knowledge, a concept behind all these. As I have told you, that they had the smallest quantity was 0.8565 grams, and you have in modern times you have got kilometer, kilogram, and all these measurements. But if you go into the traditional aspect of this, we find that this could have developed only in a highly urbanized civilization. The urbanized civilization did not emerge all of a sudden from as if a bolt from the blue, but the urban civilization also had the hinterland, vast agricultural lands of uh, the Indus region, seven seas, and because of the availability of these rivers and the water sources from that, irrigation was a successful process, and that is why we find excellent agriculture, which contributed to the trade in the agricultural products. It was not just agriculture was not essentially for their own consumption, but it was for the market. Because in human development, production for the market, whether it is agricultural product or whatever you have gathered from the forest, whether it was semi uh, industrial products, the metals which could be processed elsewhere. For example, a very important point is that uh, Mesopotamia had excellent metallurgists almost during the same period, but they did not have the availability of all the metals. Much of these metals had to come from India. Copper, bronze, and other metals had to go from India, from an Indus Valley region, but it was processed and prepared in a excellent manner in Mesopotamia, because we have evidence from uh, people like earlier writers, S.R. Rao. S.R. Rao mentions about some of these important points where the Indus Valley people had uh, produced certain things, the production of excellent variety of metal products from Mesopotamia, and the similarity on the artifacts, which S.R. Rao and other writers, Alpin and other writers mention about later, that the engravings on some of the very important uh, artifacts from Indus Valley and the similarity of these artifacts, the engravings, with that of Elam, the artifacts taken from Elam civilization and also from Mesopotamia. So this evidence has been corroborated in a big way. And we also find that uh, in Deccan region, much later, they had located almost same potteries and artifacts of metal and other things, which also had almost similar designs and patterns as we find in the Elam region and also in the Indus Valley region. So it is the point is that this had extended to very vast area, not only in the uh, Indus region, but even beyond that, it had extended. Much later, archaeologists have identified the evidence of some of these important artifacts, which would show that the similarities of this with the Elam artifacts, the Mesopotamian artifacts, and also the artifacts which were located in India, in the Deccan region itself. This was much later they had found. But it is very interesting that these evidences could be taken to corroborate a highly extended agricultural life, the resultant urbanization, because without vast hinterland and agricultural products, you cannot have trade in agricultural produce. And only with trade in agricultural produce, you have exchange of goods and services, and an urban culture could thrive in a big way. So this is a very important point which we may have to remember. Now, another question is that meteorology. Now, meteorology is taken. Now, meteorology was necessary for the those people from Indus Valley, because studies on uh, the weather conditions, studies on the recurrence of floods in the Indus rivers, studies on excess rainfall sometimes, or even uh, drought in certain areas if it had happened. So it was necessary for a consistent civilization, which continued for thousands of years. Uh, some of these things, the ideas on weather conditions, the climatic factors, these were very important. So, very clear information we get about the knowledge they possessed on meteorological uh, information. You have evidence of this from several locations, and also the information we have also found from the parallel areas of Indus Elam state, as well as in the Mesopotamian region. So meteorology was a very important branch of early knowledge. This branch of knowledge had developed in the subsequent centuries, much later, after 1300 BC. You find we have information on uh, various Vedic writings, because this was a continuation of the earlier knowledge which was preserved. There was nothing like a total destruction of anything, but it continued to survive in the Indian conditions. Now, one of the interesting aspects of uh, the astronomical thing, because astronomy was also a very important area here we find. The astronomical thinking developed in this area, because we have scholars from Finland, Asko Parpola, and others have concentrated on uh, the studies of stars uh, and the planets. The knowledge was there even in the Indus Valley time, because they have mentioned very clearly uh, not all the 9 planets, but 6 planets were clearly identified. Example, uh, Venus, you have the Dravidian root term uh, Vena, which of course it became a Sanskrit word later, but the term was used even earlier. So Parpola and his team, they were more interested in reconstructing and deciphering the information on uh, these aspects, the elementary astronomy. How did it develop? Now they have found in certain uh, uh, evidences from Indus Valley, you have the symbols of fish continuously used in some of the artifacts. And we have also stars pictured along with that. The picture of fish and the picture of star. Then Parpola goes to the root word in the Dravidian languages. For fish, it is mean, because mean is used in Kannada, in Tamil, in Malayalam, in all the South Indian languages. We say it is minu or mean. Now, what is when you go into the root word of mean, forget about later expression of Matsya. But when you go into the deeper meaning of the root meaning of the word, it means glitter. What is glittering in water is the mean or fish. What is glittering on the sky is the nakshatra, the star. That is why the Indus Valley people had used uh, the figures of stars on the one hand, fish on the other hand. And for deeper study, people like Parpola and others argued that this was the elementary astronomical system a group of Indus seals had provided. And they located the similarity between the Dravidian, the meaning of the Dravidian term Minu, and which is the root word means glittering thing, the glittering in water, glittering on the sky. Now, we have large number of representation of pictorial representation of fish and star on these seals. Earlier, people just looked at it and that just ignored it. These people had on the seals, you have the pictures of fishes on the one hand and stars on the other hand. So Parpola and his team went to the root meaning of the term fish, the mean, and he found that this is something which is glittering in water. The other one is glittering on the sky. So we have almost 6 planets were noticed on some of these seals. And the demarcation of these planets and the knowledge about its distance from Earth, not in a scientific way as we understand today, but they had a rudimentary knowledge of the location of each of the stars on the sky and how these stars make movements, because they were making observations on that. They could have taken any other word for describing it or any other object for doing it, but they specifically took only the symbol of fish and the symbol of star, which compelled Parpola and his associates to go deeper into the Dravidian root. And he has built up an argument, built up a concept on the basis of this, and serious debates and discussions going on in academic circles now in different countries. So constellation of 6 stars, the knowledge on the constellation of 6 stars existed during the Indus Valley period, because it is a very important aspect of human knowledge and human science in a big way. Now, these ideas, which we find in the seals, we don't say that it stopped at that. In the subsequent centuries, which followed the Indus Valley, whether we call it Indus Valley decline or destruction or whatever we may call it, this knowledge continued to exist. There was nothing like a total wiping out of a civilization or culture, even in the absence of a well-organized urban civilization. But the knowledge which they possess, for example, the practice of naming children on the basis of nakshatra, looking at the stars. Perhaps this practice was started during the Indus Valley period because they had given so much importance for stars of the sky and the shining things, the glittering things in water, because they were surrounded by the river water, and on the other side, they had the Persian Gulf, where they had access to the Persian Gulf. And therefore, uh, because of natural reasons, the idea of the minimum knowledge of the astronomy, what is the sky, looking at the sky, the stars, they could clearly identify up to 6 stars. And these are located in the Indus Valley seals in many areas. So Parpola, the Finnish scholar, and his associates talk about a very important branch of knowledge which developed in the Indus Valley period, because this could be taken from the evidence they could take from the seals themselves. And they did not stop at that, but they went into the deeper meaning of the fish, the Dravidian terms used for this. Dravidian is basically Drava and Ida, a land surrounded by the peninsular India is surrounded by water on all the 3 sides. So Dravidian comes from Drava and Ida, the place, the Dravidian term Ida or Idam, which is a region which is identified between the 3 oceans, the Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, and Indian Ocean. So the term has come from that. So it is very important that trade and commerce, which developed in the Indus Valley region, because of the absence of a small system, has perhaps helped the Indus Valley people to carry on with the trade as long as they were not harassed by anyone, and build an urban culture of a high order, which could stand along with the Mesopotamian or the southern Iranian Elamite civilization at that time. And they developed metrology, because metrology has a link with increasing trade and commerce. So metrology was developed in a big way because it was a necessity. Necessity became the mother of invention, even in the Indus Valley period. So metrology was developed in a big way. We may be surprised to see the way in which the calculation went. It went beyond, much below 1 gram or 1 meter of measurement, either linear measurement or the weight which we uh, consider for a particular item which was exported or traded. So metrology was a very important science which was not borrowed from either Mesopotamian or other areas, but Indus Valley people themselves developed in a very scientific way because they were the people who traded with Mesopotamia and Elam uh, kingdom, civilization, and other areas in a big way. We had the products, we were trading, but the necessity of weights and measures was very crucial in that particular civilization. And this necessity became the mother of these inventions. And metrology was developed in a very big way, which is not noticed in many of the other civilizations of this particular period. Then astronomy developing in a smaller way, that linking when you put the name for a child, you use the name of a star. In fact, people like Sanghalia argue that the practice of using star calendar on the basis of the movement of stars. We have heard about the lunar calendar and this solar calendar developing in places like ancient Greece and ancient Rome. In fact, Julius Caesar was the person who uh, decided and developed 365 days of an year. And it was not just he introduced suddenly, but he had gathered the knowledge which existed in many parts of Greece, many parts of Egypt, and experts were brought from these areas. And experts from Rome, they were asked to go to Egypt, they were asked to go to Greece and other places to conduct the studies on the movement of. So you have studies on the solar calendar and also the lunar calendar taking place uh, during the period of Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar was credited with the decision of ultimately making 365 days. It was a great scientific discovery. It was done by a group of experts from vast regions of the Mediterranean. And it took perhaps months and years to identify the movement of the sun, the stars, and then decide on this and the problem. And that's why you find the names given, you know, uh, June, July, one depicting Julius, January, the Jano-faced symbolic item. February has why you have only 28 days or 29 days. All these were very well calculated during Roman period, but much before that, we have the the practice of much before the uh, lunar calendar developed. In the Indus Valley, you find the movement of various planets, that is, 6 planets which were identified. And on the basis of this, they were making a link with the social life. In the social life, the stars became important. Children were named after the stars. Their birth time was decided on the basis of the movement of a particular star on the planet on the sky. And this became perhaps Jyotisha developed much later, or so many other branches of knowledge, which we may call scientific. Some of them are unscientific, but elementary knowledge of the movement of planets. It was a very crucial development in ancient times because it took at least several thousands of years to decide. Only 100 years before Jesus was born, 365 days could be identified as specifically on a calendar. That was during Julius Caesar's time, it was done. So you can imagine that thousands of years have passed for human civilization to go for some fundamental discoveries and inventions. 12,000 years back, they started agricultural operations in the regions of Jordan and other areas of southern Iran and Mesopotamia and Indus Valley. And it took such a long period for human beings in this part of the world to go for meteorology, to go for meteorology, study of weather conditions and drought and rainfall. The information was rudimentary, but we have evidence of their attempts into these areas of knowledge. I just stop here. If you want to ask any questions, you can ask. I give you more time to ask questions.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, what is the contribution of Professor Shirin Ratnagar to the studies on Indus Valley civilization? Could you please further elaborate on this, sir?
Shirin Ratnagar has basically in her major work on Indus Valley, she has focused on the decline of Indus Valley civilization. She doesn't take the argument that the marauding forces have come from outside and destroyed the urban culture and destroyed it. That is not the argument. But the point is that because of the change of the course of the rivers, or change in the climatic factors, or change in the fortune of trade, inter regional trade, and also trade between different regions like Mesopotamia and Indus Valley and southern Iran, which is today known as the earlier known as the Elam state. It had an identified capital, Susa capital, which emanated from the term Susan, who was a female character in the royal family, and the city was named after her. You have a lot of evidences and cross references about this in other records, including Old Testament chapters. You get information on this. There is depiction on war, depiction on various other developments there. Okay. So she doesn't take the position that this was destroyed by people who came from outside, whether it is Aryans or Indo-Europeans or other forces who came and defeated somebody and captured it. That argument uh, she doesn't take up. The basic reason is that we don't have evidences of large-scale skeletons on these regions, whether it was in the Indus Valley regions, because in a major war, you should get evidence of the killing of thousands and thousands of people, and then evidence of their skeletons and other remnants from that. But argument goes in a much more scientific way that she establishes the linkage with southern part of the land and which is Elam. You know, Ceylon is still called Elam in Tamil. Migrations have taken place perhaps from the Indus Valley population, which created a civilization. The southern part, and perhaps they had migrated even up to Ceylon. Ceylon is called Elam, one of the terms used for it. So that is a different development. So if you start from the Neolithic revolution, that is the expansion of agricultural operations and the rearing of domestic animals, and it is very important that they had a lot of products for international trade. It could be agricultural products, it could be what is gathered uh, in the form of metals or uh, precious stones and other things. Brass and copper, mainly Neolithic people had copper and brass as the most important metals, and also silver in some form. So the basic argument of Ratnagari is on these lines. Of course, in certain articles which she wrote,
Sir,
uh,
sir, I am Dr. Basaya Matpati from Government First Grade College, Telson, sir.
yeah,
Sir,
yeah.
what about the trade and trade contacts, contacts between South India and Harappan civilization about gold, sir, especially with gold contact. And another thing is whether gold is derived from the southern India or from the Sistan and Baluchistan.
No. I haven't gone into this information, which was not, because we have references about large quantities of copper, large quantities of bronze. Uh, we don't have clear evidence because much later we have evidence of the gold being mined in certain areas of southern India. Even some of the earlier information we have. Kolar, for example. Kolar became a very important gold mine region. But the point is that much earlier times, in the early medieval and ancient times, we have references about uh, the gold mining, the gold which is procured, because most of the, even in the Sangam literature also, we have here and there references about gold procured from a region beyond the Sahyadri. I mean, they have located, perhaps it was around Kolar and other, present Kolar and other areas. So I haven't gone into this aspect of whether there was a uh, constant trade in gold, because gold was used in larger quantities much later. In the Greco-Roman period, we have large quantities of use of gold coins, along with copper and silver coins. And we have information on Arikamedu and other places, huge quantities of gold coins, Roman gold coins, discovered. And we have in places like Muziris, they had located even gold coins, Roman gold coins, and Phoenician traders also used to come much before the Romans entered. The Phoenician traders also used to come, and by the time you come down to the Roman period or Greco-Roman period, we have large quantities of gold, silver, and copper coins, and these could be located in many areas, including southern India, because very recently they could locate these coins from many areas of South India. So I think in the Indus Valley period, the gold was not a very important item. Perhaps the digging was not taking place it had not become a very big industry. Uh, I don't have a.
Alchin, sir, in the book of Alchin's Rise
I'll
of
check. Yeah.
Civilization in India and Pakistan has mentioned about gold. That's why I asked, sir.
Gold is used in a smaller quantity, but
Yeah.
Indus Valley period, the exact location where it was mined and taken out, we don't have direct evidence for that. That would be difficult.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
Okay. Thank you.
perhaps, because from South India, where the trade was going on on larger scale to Indus Valley, we don't have that information. That perhaps in the near future, someone may come out with that, but in the southern literature of the earlier period, so Sangam literature is around 2000, around AD, first century, second century, third century AD and all that. But earlier to that, we don't have even literary information in many areas. Of course, excavations are going on. If they can excavate in new areas and then establish a link, perhaps it is possible. Most of these writers argue that either people have migrated towards the south from the Indus Valley area much later, and the movement of the Indus Valley, the stock which you call them as Dravidian, they had migrated towards south in thousands of years, and then they were followed by other migrants, the Indo-Europeans or Aryans or whatever term you use. There was again a migration, Chino migration. These are areas you don't have very clear answer right now, but findings are there, rudimentary findings are there, and Alpin's book, which was published much earlier. Yes, yes,
Sir,
yes.
sir, I am Sridhar Naik from Mangalore University.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Sridhar Naik from Mangalore University.
Yeah, I can hear.
My doubt is, particularly Indus Valley civilization had connected with the Kollam in the trade field, because Roman coins are found in Kollam. So that my main intention is particularly had trade relations with the Kollam and Indus Valley civilization.
No, Kollam had developed much later. Kollam, you see, Quailon, which you call, it developed much later. Musiris was much earlier. Even Musiris, we get mentioned in the Greco-Roman literature. Greco-Roman literature, we get it. So during the Greco-Roman period, only we get more information about Musiris and other harbor towns. Musiris was destroyed in the flow of various rivers and heavy rain. It had lost its importance as a convenient harbor town. Similarly, Quailon developed much later, early centuries of AD. For example, first century AD or first century BC, second century. During this period, we have a lot of information on Kollam and also about Musiris, Kranganur, that is Kodungalur. But we don't have information about Indus Valley and Kollam, because there is a difference of several thousands of years. At least
Good morning, sir.
3,000 years of gap there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. I'm Robert Rodriguez from St. Mary's College, Brahmore, affiliated to Mangalore University. See, in the Egyptian civilization, we come across the concept called sphinx, half lion, half, that is kept in front of, what is that? Pyramids, in front of the pyramid.
Yeah.
We come across, the statements or information saying that while burying the dead bodies of pharaohs, along with this, gold, silver, and all that, even living animals and even humans were also buried. That's the understanding we had. So use of gold and silver, it was in practice even almost 6th century BC, prior to 6th century BC, sir, in Egyptian civilization.
We have information on that, but the point is that in pyramids, it again depends on their beliefs. Pharaohs, not ordinary human beings in Egypt, were not buried in the pyramids. Those who were buried there were people who were of the royal stock, the kings and the royal family members. They were buried there. And when they were buried, when they go to the other world, they believed that they should carry whatever they had in this world. So many products, artifacts and other things, including you have information about wheat or barley or so many things could be gathered from these burial places. In the Indus Valley region, the burial could not be taken, dead bodies could not be preserved in that way successfully because it was a highly arid region, heavy rainfall, flood, and a constant flood was taking place, receding of the river banks into, this process was going on. But in the regions of Egypt, it was a different scenario. So dead bodies could not be preserved in Indus Valley because of perhaps this particular factors related to climate and constant rainfall and other problem, the flow of rivers.